Okay, ready? Do you have an intro?
We're live right now, Robert. We don't need to talk about doing the intro. We're doing the intro.
Track and field fans, we were testing your loyalty. Thank you for joining us. If you wonder if Bill Gates' blue screen of death still exists, yes, it does, folks. We've had the blue screen of death 3 times in the last 15 minutes. Thank you, Bill. Hope you don't come out any David Epstein files, or not David Epstein. What's his name?
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Robert's only had 2 beers so far, and I'm not sure if he should open that third one on the side of the table.
Anyways, folks, this is the 2025 NCAA Day 2 Instant Reaction Show. Wild and crazy NCAAs. In case you missed it, we were crowned 6 mid-D and distance champions today. All 6 brand new. None of them had ever won an NCAA title. So we've got 6 new winners. They're on top of the world. We had some crazy stuff in the team battle. Jerry Schumacher, Oregon. People have been shitting on him on the message boards for years. He wins team title number 1 on the women's side. USC, they win the team title on the men's side. They got screwed out of a Big Ten title at the conference meet with a controversial DQ. They almost got screwed out of one today. We'll talk about that and much more.
Well, Robert, your favorite hypothetical scenario, a rerun of a race almost happened to decide an NCAA title indoors. Didn't happen. It would have been a kind of a strange situation with Arkansas potentially running them by themselves. I mean, this was the weirdest ending to an NCAA meet I've ever seen, because the 4x4 happens. Obviously, the first exchange is where the big incident occurs.
Let's just pause for a minute. Going into the 4x4, USC was up by 4 over Arkansas. I think they were seeded 3rd and 4th, respectively. The only way Arkansas is going to win this meet is if they finish first. A tie would actually be a possibility. The scoring goes 10-8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So if Arkansas wins, USC finishes 3rd, they have a tie. A tie at an NCAA championship is like kissing your sister. If there's a tie, they should obviously go to the team that was at the highest in the 4x4 and they're a winner. There should never be a tie in a track meet. There should never be a tie in a soccer match. There should never be PKs.
Whoa. Let's not say things that we can't take back.
A championship soccer match, John, not a regular season match.
Well, we have these things called penalty kicks to break ties.
No, that's a disgrace too. Right. Expanding goal, Robert Johnson. I want to see, before I die, a rerun of a track race, but not tonight. And I want to see expanding goals before penalty kicks. But anyways, the race ends on the second exchange. Explain what happened.
Yeah, well, no, it's the first exchange. Everyone's trying to cut in. It wasn't even the exchange. It was the cut-in point 200 meters into the race, which is basically what you get in indoor 400. And everyone's trying to get to the same spot because it's very valuable to be in front in an indoor 400. And the Texas A&M leadoff runner cuts off the Arkansas leadoff runner. He was DQ'd for that. Arkansas drops the baton. Their race is done. You drop the baton in the 4x4, you're screwed at NCAAs. And they protest. And they protest, one, the Texas A&M thing, but then there was a lot of talk, and it seems like Arkansas wanted to have the chance for themselves to rerun that race and to post a time, because if they had the fastest time, that would have given them 10 points. They finished with 30. USC had 39. It would have moved them to 40 points, given them the team title. And it was this bizarre scene where the meet ends and pretty much everyone leaves the arena. There were, a few team staffs. The USC team was still there getting ready to celebrate. Arkansas's team was still there. And then just assorted media types and some event staff. But the stands were largely empty. And in the middle of the infield, you just see this quartet of Arkansas guys getting warmed up as if they are going to run this solo 4x4. And Marcus Thatcher, who's the NCAA's media coordinator for the event, he comes up and he's like, just to let you know, there's been a couple protests filed and there might be a potential rerun. I don't know if it's going to happen. And this thing is just wafting in the ether and everyone's freaking out. And I go over to Robert. I'm like, Robert, you just wanted to see this. He's like, but not like this. We're talking to the USC the USC guys on the team trying to figure out. And they're like, they'd gone through this at Big Tens. They were frustrated about it as well. And so we also got to the point where I was approached like, would you like to be the pool reporter to ask the person who's making the decisions about this DQ to get a media statement out of that? That's how controversial this whole thing was, is that it almost required a pool reporter like you have with the NFL asking the referees after controversial decisions.
Well, look, it took us, 10 minutes to get to the real. The only reason this is Let'sRun.com. We're a distance website. We're talking sprint websites because it was the highlight of Jonathan Gault's life. Of all of the
highlight of your life.
It was the highlight of my life because I hired Jonathan Gault. I gave this poor, uneducated Dartmouth grad a chance 10 years ago. And it was like they needed one reporter to ask the questions. And they picked you. Honestly, John, I thought it was great. I was like, wow, they know John's the only legitimate journalist in this joint. Everyone else is a social media influencer or me, a fan. Thank you, John. So anyways, the whole time this was happening I was like bonding. I now have two favorite runners in the NCAA. One is Marco Langdon of Villanova. Marco, I love you. And two is the Villanova. I don't even know this guy's name, unfortunately. Help look it up, John. Junior from USC. He won the Pac-12 title as a freshman, 44-6 as a freshman. He's like, dude, they screwed us out of conference last week. Now they're trying to screw us out of a natty. I was like, yes, they are. So it was fascinating. We talked about Caleb Williams, whether he goes to the parties. It was amazing. But
that's some good gossip there,
yes,
Robin.
I won't reveal that on this show.
Look, the end product of all of this is Arkansas did not get to rerun the 4x4 by themselves, which would have been a farce because not only would have they been doing this race with basically no one left in the arena, everyone leaving the stadium thinking USC had won the team title, but it's unfair to the rest of the teams because part of the indoor 4x4 is getting to the break on the leadoff leg and managing these handoffs, which get chaotic. That's part of the indoor 4x4. And I feel bad for Arkansas because they kind of got screwed by this. They didn't get a chance to run for a title because they were fouled by Texas A&M. Like, that's not fair.
Did you think it was a blatant foul by Texas A&M?
I watched the replay. I do think he cut him off. I think he cut in when there wasn't room to cut in. It wasn't like I think if you look at the DQ and the results, it actually says blatant infringement or blatant impeding, which I don't know if it was blatant, but I do think, okay, whatever. But Arkansas got caught a bad break. Like, this sucks. It's not fair what happened to them. But unfortunately, like, these indoor 400s and 4x4s can get super chaotic. And that unfortunately comes with the territory. So I just don't think you can give them the chance to run by themselves and then post a time when they're not facing the same conditions as every other school. And I also think it's ridiculous bringing back the other schools to race them because they've already got a 4x4 in their legs. So it's really like this is the best solution to a bad situation. But I feel bad for Arkansas and feel bad for USC for having to wait an hour to celebrate.
I don't really feel bad for Arkansas. They were 4 points down entering the final event. They're not even seated higher than USC. So we got the just outcome. Like, yeah, I guess you want to think that you're going to win this race, but in reality, because of the contact in the third heat, USC won that third heat, but they didn't even win the overall thing because the fastest times came out the second heat. So,
well, I can't believe we spent the first 10 minutes of this podcast talking about. Well, the first 10 minutes of this podcast was just everyone staring at a blank screen because we've had some issues with Robert's laptop here in Virginia Beach. But the next 10 minutes, we're talking about 4x4. Now we need to talk about the greatest rivalry in NCAA track and field, Ethan Strand and Gary Martin. I mean, going into this meet, Robert, we build this as a Clash of the Titans, the only two NCAA milers ever to run the 350. They were going to square off Friday night in the DMR and Saturday night in the 3K. And how often do we go into these things? We build it up as A versus B, and then in comes C, some random person, and they totally flip the script. That's not what happened. To me, it was exactly what we thought it was going to be. It's the Strand versus Gary Martin show, and the first encounter on Friday night totally lived up to the hype. Fastest DMR anchor ever by Gary Martin to get the win from Virginia, and then tonight Ethan Strand comes over the top and flips the script, and he's on the last 200. He likes to come from behind. He takes the lead entering the final time. Buries Gary Martin with a sensational lost 200 meters, 25.39, I believe. Just world-class closing speed right there. He wins at 7:52. Martin the second. Adam Spencer from Wisconsin, he closed very well as well, sub 26 for third. But it's just really, really exciting. The DMR showdown lived up to the hype. The 3K lived up to the hype. And now we get to see these guys do battle outdoors as well. They're in the same conference. Like, It's yes, I think it is, Robert.
And we're back. What I loved about this race was we talked about this last night, like who's the favorite in 3,000? And I think most people assumed kind of what we assumed heading into last night. Well, Ethan Strand owned Gary Martin at ACCs in the 5,000. Of course, he's going to own in the DMR. But what we learned last night was a 1,600 leg is not the same thing as a 5,000. And I kind of reminded myself of that last night. I said, look, a 3,000 is not the same thing as a 1,600. I think at 3,000, I'm going to give the edge. He's super motivated, Ethan Strand. So I picked Ethan Strand over Martin and was confirmed on that. Now, I did pick Brian Musau over both of them to win it. But
Ethan Strand, truther right here. I picked him in the 3K. Just want to take credit for that one.
But it was amazing. But halfway through that final lap, I was honestly thinking to myself, holy shit, Gary Martin is going to win both of these. I was like, wow, he's just done it. Like this is insane. So I thought it was perfect. We're going to have the written recap up on the website soon. The post-race comments were fantastic. There's a wonderful respect between the two of these guys. I mean, I think John can actually find some of the quotes that I typed up. But Ethan's like, look, sometimes I win, sometimes he wins. We're not going to win. You can't win all the time. And I said, well, what was the difference between last night and tonight? And he's like, I was much more patient. He's like, it's very interesting. He's like, Coach Biltz always says, wait and kick last. Like, wait to the final 200, kick and do that. And he's like, last night, I didn't talk to Milt about it. I just decided in the middle of the race that I thought I could take it from farther out, like 350 meters out. He's like, that was a big mistake. I made a mistake. I'm trying to learn from it. And it's actually like Vin Lanano. When we talked to Vin Lanano last night, what was the difference between here and ACCs? He's like, well, it helped that Gary wasn't leading. He was coming from behind. So really interesting on that front. And it was a contrast actually to the UNC woman, Michaela Page, that won the women's 800. We'll talk about the race later. She was third at ACCs in the women's 800. She wins tonight. I said, Milt, what was the difference? He's like, she was much more aggressive. I wanted her being decisive up front. He's like, when you grab a tiger, we say you grab the tiger by the neck. You don't grab it by the tail. So he wanted her to go out and be in the front, and she just led wire to wire, won NCAA title. His other star athlete, a different event, different sex, he's like, I want him waiting and being patient. So you have to have different advice for different athletes, different events. But they met fabulous day for UNC. Miltonberg has done an amazing job of building this program up. And of all the schools here, the biggest crowd to me, and maybe it's more obvious because they're in the light blue and white, wouldn't see. There was tons of parents, tons of fans. I know it's kind of close by, but amazing support for UNC track and field this weekend.
Yeah, actually, it was a good location for UVA and UNC because UVA last night the DMR ankle leg was dead, and maybe that was UNC fans cheering for Strand, but I think there was a lot of UVA fans as well. This is kind of a meet in the middle location for them, which was great. But yeah, this 3K, I love the mutual respect. I love that moment right at the finish line. Strand wins the 3K. And the first guy to congratulate him is Gary Martin. And then Brian Musau, who won the 5K last night, he sees them both and he comes in for a hug, and they all just hug at the finish line. Like, how great is that? You wouldn't see that in the men's 1500, nor at the pro level, nor would I want to. But I just love the mutual respect. They're all like, they all got their title this weekend. They all, raced their asses off. And Gary Martin, his perspective afterwards, he basically said this. It's like, I just didn't have the last gear when I needed it. It happens. I had it last night, didn't have it today, but overall, really good weekend. And I think that's what you get when you get two runners who are very close in ability, and they're racing 2 times in 2 nights. And when it comes down to people who are that close in ability, it might just be 1, race dynamics, like who kicks last, and 2, are you feeling a little better than the other guy? And I think he had a little bit more left in him. But in those sort of scenarios,
it also could be which event you're best at. Maybe Gary Martin's a little bit more mile oriented. Strand's sweet spot is the 3,000. Masau's sweet spot is the 5.
That's part of it. But you're also facing these tough decisions. Like Gary Martin, right, in the 3K tonight, he moved up. He was in the long time. He moves up to the shoulder of the leaders with 400 to go, something like that. He gets in position for the kick, and then it's like, all right, when do I go? Because you want to get in the lead at some point in the last lap, obviously. And it's nice, you're running the shortest line. Like, you don't want to wait too long but you also usually want to be the last guy to kick, right? Yeah. So it's a delicate balance of do I take the lead at 200 and I kind of know I can get it? Or do I wait until 100 to go like Ethan Strand did? I think Ethan Strand, there's no scenario he was going to take the lead early. He was like, I'm waiting until Gary Martin moves and then I'm going to move. But Gary was like, well, the lead's kind of here, and Luke Tewalt of Wake Forest was trying to hold him off. Like, if I don't move here, someone's going to move to the lead. He took it. He didn't quite have enough. He still closed in 26 seconds. Like, it's not like he closed badly, but Strand just had that extra gear tonight. It's just it's very tough in the moment to know, all right, I need to kick, but do I kick? When exactly do I kick?
I think the other thing is, other than the event groups and them alternating, is the hunger factor. Musau's already eaten. Martin's already eaten. Strand wants to eat. So I think you're just not quite as desperate, when you've already won 1 NCAA title. I pulled up the quotes. He says, Miltenberg always says, wait and go last, wait and go last. So congratulations to Ethan Strand. And Ethan said it, who asked him about Parker Wolf. He's like, look, I view Parker Wolf as the best guy in the NCAA. He's like, everything's gone well for me in track. I've had no hiccups. I've had no illness. He's like, it's been the opposite for Parker Wolf. So we'll see what happens outdoors.
Parker ran pretty well today. He was 6th, and against some really good guys. He didn't have that top gear quite yet, but if he can stay healthy between now and the end of outdoors, he's going to be obviously very dangerous again in that 5K.
Sean Odom on YouTube is saying USA mid-D and distance running is in incredible shape for the next 5 years. People were talking about, afterwards, like, hey, do you appreciate, they asked Strand, do you appreciate how the NCAA is right now? All these amazing guys, we've never seen it like this. And he's like, I'm trying to. He's like, I think we're going to be, me and Gary, we're going to be pros for 10 years, how special this is. So it was kind of cool that they're already thinking about sort of their legacy. But great men's 3,000. Really.
It was awesome. And someone like Liam Murphy was 4th. He was kind of pissed off to get 4th. He was like, I came in, I was thinking this could be my weekend, and maybe it could have gone. You run this thing over 10 times, maybe you get some different winners. But he's a guy. He wants to be at that level too, and he's got a pretty good kick, and he actually closed very well tonight, 36:02. He had the second best last lap in this field. He was just coming from too far back, and he said, I think I have some tactical areas I need to improve on. The 5K, one of the Villanova assistants was rewatched the race and said through the first 4 kilometers, Murphy ran 7 seconds worth of extra distance by running, in lane 2 or lane 3. Now, it's a back of the envelope calculation. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but today again, he was pretty far back at the bell. He was 9th place and worked his way up to 4th. But if he's a little bit better position, maybe he's not beating Strand, but he might get 2nd or 3rd. These guys, Adam Spencer is a 3:31 guy. He's the Australian champion, Olympian. He closed in 25.8. He gets 3rd. That's how hard. It's really hard to win these races. So, Strand and Martin getting added to the mix. And then we've got, I think we should move to the mile because we have a new emerging star guy coming in. We're like, oh, he's an NCAA champion. He's run 350 this year. He's the clear favorite. Abel Tefra of Georgetown has had a fantastic season. His only loss this year to a collegian was to his teammate. Tinoda Matsatsa broke the collegiate record, and Abel Tefra would have broken the collegiate record if Matsatsa wasn't in the race. So he was, I think, maybe a little overlooked going into this one. I figured he could pull away from him in the home straight like he did. But I look at this and say, 1, Abel Tefra is a guy we need to know moving forward. He's going to be a factor. And 2, Nathan Green didn't really do anything wrong. He ran basically a great race. He ran a winning race, and he got beat by another fantastic athlete. So he can go away from this race with his head held high. He just got beat by an absolute stud.
Correct. Tefra is interesting. In case you're not familiar with him, he's a senior, lost sort of COVID senior year of high school. So he's been running since 7th grade. He's Ethiopian American. So I confirmed with him after the race, both of his parents were born in Ethiopia. He's like, they immigrated to the U.S. in the 70s or 80s. He's like a classic kid. He didn't know when his parents came over. But he was running in 7th grade. He's like, I didn't take it seriously. It was only in 10th grade did he start sort of really a little grader, gets serious as an 11th grader, and runs 4:14 before COVID. Now, 4:14 probably coaching staff there for giving him a chance, and has sort of just, never finished higher than 5th, but was getting better and better. And I asked him, I said, what do you think the key was? 5th to 1st is kind of a big gap, a big jump. And he, while he's Ethiopian American, he gave some praise to Jakob Ingebrigtsen. He said, I think I was 2nd to last. And he praised double threshold. Something my coach added this fall was double threshold. I always lacked like that, the strength side of running. I think I was 2nd to last at the national meet 3 years ago in cross country. And just this past year, we started doing double threshold, and I was 65th. So he actually went from 250th to 169th to 65th. And, he said he's always sort of been weak on the strength side. He's really worked on that, and he's improved. And I said, hey, man, being Ethiopian American, though, are you a Jared Goose fan? And he's like, yeah, I was in high school when Jared won the outdoor 1500 in 2019. And I was like, oh, my God, this guy's Ethiopian American. I was like, I want to be like that one day. It's crazy how it's come full circle. So it is kind of crazy, right? It's just it's a neat story. And this gets into what we were talking about, I think, on last night's podcast, or was it just privately here in the Airbnb, John, about why aren't there more Ethiopian middle distance runners? Why is Kenya sort of not excelling at the world stage like they used to? And is it coaching? And I feel like Jared Goose is proof positive that just the mid-D coaching in Ethiopia must not be good. Clearly the genetics are there. We've seen it with Tefra. We've seen it with Nagus. And Rich Kanaa, Atlanta Track Club head, former bronze medalist 800, he told me probably when he was an agent, he told me 30 years ago, probably about 20 years ago. He's like, I just don't think they're used to coaching mid-D stars, in Ethiopia. So congratulations to Tefra. Amazing win for him. And it's just more excitement for our favorite event in track and field, the men's 1500 and mile moving to outdoors.
Yeah, because Nathan Green, who was the runner-up, and Washington had this incredible streak of 5 straight NCAA champions in the men's 1500 mile across 3 different athletes. And they just fell short. That one place away from extending that to 6. He was, if you look at his career, historically, he's been much better in the 1500 outdoors than he has been in the mile indoors. So I don't think, if you're a Nathan Green fan, I really don't think there's reason to panic. He ran a smart race today. He got beaten by a really outstanding athlete. And I think there's more to come from him when you move to outdoors. Remember, this guy was 5th at the Olympic trials last year as a junior in college. So I'm still very high on Nathan Green. But
we're getting a question in chat here from Jared Kerr. If you were coaching these athletes, how would you manage expectations? What were your central philosophies while coaching in Cornell? Look, if you're results oriented, it's not going to work. Like, the reality is there can only be one winner of a race, particularly at the college level. I would just are you doing everything you can do to be the better? Are you improving your training? Are you taking the next step in training? Running is not like tennis where what you do really impacts other people. I mean, distance racing, a little bit impacts people. Like sprinting is just an all-out time trial in your event, in your lane. So it has nothing to do with it. But you've got to focus on you. You've got to focus on your training. And that's kind of like why I somewhat jokingly told every miler in the OAC to quit the group when Yair Nagus got better than them, because you guys are going to be doing the same training. He's already better than you. He's going to continue to be better than you. But, are you sleeping enough? Are you healthy? Are you not going out on the weekends as much? Focus on the process, not the results. Because, it was actually interesting to me in the women's mile. I was thinking about this. Maggie Congdon, NAU runner. Everyone wants to win, but she was 3rd. Mike Smith went up to her and they were just celebrating. I was like, it wasn't like, oh, I lost. She was thrilled to get 3rd. And I was kind of struck by that. But Mike's always claimed that he's a process guy, right? And he's like, I never talked to them about winning NCAA cross country. And I think that he's not just bullshitting us in these interviews, because to see them celebrate getting 3rd was damn good. For whatever reason, that was the best she could do. And that's what they were happy with.
I think in terms of setting expectations, you just have to remind these athletes how good the talent level is in the NCAA and how hard it is to win titles. If you look at some of the recent champions in the NCAA indoor mile, right? 2017, you have Josh Kerr, who is a world champion. 2019, you've got Jordy Beamish, who's a world indoor champion. 2021, Cole Hawker, Olympic champion. 2022, Mario Garcia Romo wins NCAA indoors, gets 4th in the world that year. So you just got to tell them, look, you can get 2nd or 3rd. A lot of the times it just comes down to okay, who's hot right now? And last year indoors, Nico Young, he just hit it, and for 2 months, he was the best guy in the NCAA. But he wasn't the best in cross country. He was only 5th or 6th. And outdoors, he ran really well, but he was beaten by Parker Wolf, because Parker Wolf was timed his peak really well, and he peaked right for NCAA outdoors and the Olympic trials. So I just think you have to be realistic and say, look, this is one race. It's March. You will have other opportunities. And if you get 3rd or 4th, just know there's a plan in place, and there are really, really good athletes that you're going up against. Because I talked to Andy Powell, the Washington coach, after this, and I said, man, your streak's over. What are the feelings? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of a bummer, but he's also maybe it's a good thing. And he says we got a chance to restart the streak in June. And I think this is a guy who coached Edward Cheserek in college, and Cheserek always won. He won. You're not going to win every single race as a pro. If you turn pro and you're expecting to win every race, then you start getting your ass kicked and you don't know how to deal with that, that's going to be an issue. So, yeah, I think it's worth getting used to knowing, okay, you're not going to win every single race. Savor those moments when they happen because they're special, but keep it in perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely better to be the hunter than the hunted. Well, I got some chat. We got Olympians in the chat. Jason, Kiwi Olympian. Who was the more talented runner, Nagus or Jakob? We'll talk about it on another podcast.
I've heard Jason might have an opinion on this question.
Yeah. it was fascinating. It's a brilliant point. But all right, let's talk about the other distance events. I guess we've talked mile. We've talked 3,000. We haven't talked
800.
men's 800.
Canada won too. Hopefully, our audience at home is a little bit more attentive than our in-person audience. We have 2 people right now, and only 50% of them are currently awake and conscious. So I hope you're enjoying the show. But yeah, 800. This was Jerry Schumacher's, the first athlete Jerry Schumacher has coached to an NCAA title at the University of Oregon. Earlier in the day, we did have Wilma Nielsen win the women's mile, but she's coached by Shalane Flanagan primarily. This was Matthew Erickson of Oregon. He was, I think, the number 15 seed coming in. He was not highly ranked, but he ran like a seasoned pro, like really impressive race for him. Time basically did the same move Ethan Strand did. You know, was in second place coming off the first time of the last lap. 100 to go, gets the lead right entering the final turn, and holds off Abdullahi Hassan, his Canadian countryman of Mississippi State, and Aiden McCarthy, who closed really well on that last lap to take third.
Yeah, I mean, McCarthy and Matsatsa came in as 145 guys. They were a little bit disappointing to me. They didn't look amazing at either day, but the 800 is a little bit tricky. But I did talk to Jerry after the meet was over. Now that he's the Oregon head, he kind of has to meet with the media a little bit. But it was kind of interesting. He said, to be honest, I thought we could go 1-2 coming into this meet. So imagine being Erickson, John. Why don't you look up his lifetime personal best? You're the NCAA indoor 800-meter champion, but your personal best is probably, I'm going to guess, 3 full seconds slower than one of your teammates. So remember, there's a guy at Oregon that made the Kenyan Olympic team. He's run 142.
Kodatoy Kadali is his name.
He did not make the final, but it's sort of my understanding that he was in Oregon in the fall. He got in great shape. But in Kenya, it's pretty standard. A lot of the Kenyans do not run at all in December. This guy went back to Kenya, doesn't run. Comes back, loses all his fitness, and is now sort of working back into shape. But this gives them a powerful punch heading to outdoors, because if you don't think that a 142 guy is going to be a factor outdoors, you're kind of crazy. So that's the men's 8. All right, let's move to the women's action. Oregon women, Jerry Schumacher and Shalane Flanagan, they get team title number 1 under their tutelage. Dominant fashion. This was expected to be a very close team battle, but it wasn't at all. Oregon ran away with it. And part of that was just they had 55, Georgia's 39, USC 35. Part of that was like right at the gun. I mean, in the mile, the women's mile goes off. Oregon got second in the DMR last night. Both the girls, the 1,200 and 1,600 legs are back. And just quite impressive, John. Like 1-4 or was it 1-5 for Oregon?
1-4. So Wilma Nielsen, who is the 425 miler from Sweden, who ran 2 rounds of the European Championships in the 800 last weekend, then comes back, wins a heat of the mile on Friday, runs the 1,200 leg and has the fastest split in the DMR, and then took control towards the end of this one, and just, what was it, 3 laps to go? She had the lead and got a little faster, and then really dropped the hammer, 29.09 last lap to win it. So very, very impressive stuff from her. And then this was crazy, Robert. Your alma mater, Princeton University, runner-up was Mina Scatcherd, a Brit from Princeton who came from way back. I mean, she was
last with 400 meters to go and finished second place.
Yes.
And you thought like maybe if there was 10 more meters she could have won. It was really interesting to me because, first of all, we had all 6 distance winners today be people who had never won before. But you had a lot of people like barely been in NCAAs, finishing second, third, first. It was crazy. Like,
we had 2 Ivy Leaguers who had never made an NCAA final, finished second in the mile, Mina Scatcherd from Princeton, and second in the 800, Victoria Basong from Harvard. Like, it's just crazy stuff.
So, I mean, you talk to her, John, like you go from last to first to second in the 400. Was she upset that like maybe she should have won? Like
No, she was in a great mood. She was like, I just wanted to make the final coming in. You know, she was the 14th seed. Like, she's not expecting to win the thing. And I was thinking, I'm like, damn, she closed fast though. Like 28.5 in that last lap. If she had just been there, maybe I think, if she'd just been there, maybe she challenges Nielsen. And she just said in the semis or the prelims, I had success running from the back. I feel more comfortable when I'm kicking hard and closing people down. So it worked for her, and she felt like it worked for her again. It's hard to argue with second, but at the same time, I'm like, when I see someone moving way faster than everyone else in the race on the last lap, I do think, well, what if you had been just a little bit better positioned? Could you have won the race? But no, she was over the moon with second place. It was a great run for her.
Moving on to the women's 8, Michaela Page, we hinted at it earlier in the podcast. Third at ACCs. Admittedly, she did lose to 2 women who were in the final today, and Rosine Willis of Stanford and Gladys Chepangetich of Clemson, but gets the win. This was her first NCAA final, and she's a senior. Like 2 flat .39 PB, wire to wire, just super impressive. And Coach Milt's like, she was more decisive. She got in the front. She stayed out of the traffic. And she believed in herself. And it was just super impressive. Well, I mean, I kind of thought heading into the last lap, okay, Willis, Rose, these are people who've won NCAAs in the past. They're going to track her down. Rose is from the Virginia Beach area. Lots of fans, friends and family. You know, she used to be known for a front runner and kind of fading. She just hangs back, doesn't work out for her. So I mean, it was fascinating to see someone like Paige win. I interviewed her after the race, and afterwards, when the camera's off, she's like, I'm sorry to ask, but like, I haven't done an interview like in quite some time. Like, do you think I did a good job? I actually love the interview. So I'm like, you answer the questions like legitimately. You actually thought about what I was asking you. So check it out on YouTube.
Well, Robert, I will also say, I think she's the NCAA champion who came closest to falling and actually won the race in terms of like an 800 or middle distance stuff. Like 200 meters in, she kind of gets clipped from behind, and I'm just like, oh, she's done. You know, the whole field was bunching up. No, it's 200 meters in, and she lurched forward, and I'm like, oh, she's falling. Like, there's no way she can win this thing. She somehow stays on her feet. And then she said the next 100 meters, she was like, yeah, it took me about 100 meters to kind of get readjusted. And I feel like that would have been a time for someone to strike and maybe try to pass her. But the thing was, that incident kind of threw off everyone, because she was leading and they were all so tightly bunched. So she maintained the lead, and then from there was brilliant and cruised to victory. But I was just like, she was so close to going down. And it's pretty crazy that she ended up winning the race.
Yeah, I mean, nobody would have predicted this heading into the weekend. I wonder if her parents would have predicted this. We had the top 2 women under 2 coming in. Neither one makes the final.
Juliette Whitaker was 7th at the Olympics. 57th at the Olympics last year. It was like, no way does she lose to anyone.
But she didn't run individually at ACC, so that's got to make you nervous. The reality is, if I put on if I put the coaching whistle around my neck, I need to stop watching a goddamn whistle for this show. You don't run well if you're sick. You don't run well if you're hurt. That's just the reality. But I
don't think I needed a coaching whistle to say that. I was honestly kind of surprised. Like, she's not 100%. She's such a valuable asset. Like, I was a little surprised to see her in the meet. I was also surprised Amy Bunnage of Stanford, who ran the first 3K, just hammered the first 3K of the 5K on Friday night, steps off the track, is barely able to walk as she's leaving the track. She's out there in 3K tonight. I'm just like, was she not injured? What's going on with this?
You can kind of sometimes have a tracking issue on your knee. I think it was an injury. But that seemed crazy to me. Like, I don't want to totally rip other coaching stats, but I'm like, you tell the woman you're healthy enough to finish the damn race, or you don't run the next day. Like, which is it? It did seem bizarre, but hey, I'm not Dr. John. I just went to the Holiday Inn Express last night. All right, women's 3,000. I'll let you say the first name, John. I'll say the last.
Okay. Wait, I'm trying to. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble keeping track. Oh, Kaylee McCabe. Yeah.
Kaylee.
That's how you pronounce it. Kaylee McCabe of West Virginia.
Kaylee with a C. Ceili.
I think it's a probably Irish type name. She was the only fresh runner in the field. There were 16 women on the start line. All 15 of them had either run in the DMR or in the 5K or in the mile. Kaylee McCabe had not run any of those. And I'm not saying that's why she won, because she's been knocking on the door of an NCAA title for a while. I'm sure it didn't hurt her.
I love this. We saw a lot of seniors. I mean, there were a lot of seniors who have never been close to an NCAA title, like the Georgetown miler, the 800 woman for UNC. But McCabe,
well, Teffer was like fourth in the mile last year. He wasn't miles off.
Well, you're not really close to winning. Ask Hobbs Kessler. Hobbs Kessler was fifth in the Olympics. He was closer to last, or at least 10th, than he was first. But McCabe has been a woman that she's got a sick kick. Everyone knows she's got a good close. A couple of times in the past, we've wondered, could she win? Could she win across country? She's the Canadian record holder in the steeplechase. She's an Olympian. And kind of got under the radar. I hadn't raced that much this year. Picked up the qualifier in December. It was fantastic. Like, we've seen Lemngole of Alabama. She won outdoors in the steeple, won cross country, won last night. She won 3 in a row. And it's just, she kind of does the same thing. She sort of sits on this in second place, and when it's time to go, it's game over. And that's what was happening like into the last lap. We're like, okay, McCabe's run good, but Lemngole's going to outkick her. And McCabe just said, no, I'm winning at 9:01.18. Lemngole 9:01.64. Coming off the turn, though, this race was still in doubt. Lemngole, if she really hammered it, could have won it. And then Pamela Kosgei, Bridget Kosgei's sister of New Mexico, was right third. She goes down. I didn't quite see the replay.
She stepped on the rail, and it wasn't totally clear. There may have been some contact with her and Lemngole. It also may have just been that she was exhausted. But, yeah, it was an unfortunate face plant, because I was thinking, I'm like, she was right on the rail, and McCabe was kind of leaving the rail open. I'm like, is she going to blow by her on the inside?
I was wondering McCabe was worried about Lemngole, and they didn't realize that it was going to be coming over the top, both of them. But Kosgei, man, she went through the zone. I was scared to even ask her for an interview. She's steaming, storm pissed, angry. So I guess that means she's competitive.
I mean, I'd be pretty pissed if I fell in the straightaway. I was about to get like second in the NCAA championship.
Yeah, true enough.
So, yeah, that
she
was
ended up 11th.
Impressive for Kaylee McCabe. Also, shout out to Amina Matu of Washington. She was fourth last year. Last year at this meet, she ran the 3K only and dropped out. And her previous best finish in any NCAA event was fifth place. I think she was fifth in the 5K, I want to say, at NCAA Outdoors last year. And then she was fifth today in the mile. And usually these women who go back from the mile to the 3K, it doesn't go that well. I know Maya Ramsden did all right with it a couple of years ago in Albuquerque. But Shalana Yildiz of Oregon, this was, to be fair, it was her fourth race of the weekend, because she ran the mile prelim, the DMR, the mile final, and then the 3K. She stepped off after 200 meters. I don't even know why she started the race. It seemed pointless to me. But Amina Matu, she was in the back, and she said, yeah, through like 1K, I was just like, all right, it's kind of slow, all right. 2K, it picks up. She's like, I'm going to get last place. You know, this isn't going great. But then she's like, wait a minute. I actually feel pretty good. Even though she had the mile in her legs, like, she starts picking it up and she's picking people off. She gets fourth. So this was her best ever NCAA finish. And that was double back from the mile, which was less than an hour earlier. So really, really impressive day for her.
All right. I think we've covered all 6 distance events.
We need to talk the performance of the day, Robert.
Women's 400.
Yes, there we go.
Isabelle Whitaker, formerly of Ivy League Penn, folks. You have 2 Ivy League geniuses here. This is why the camera was out all day, because we act like we're smart. Actually, Bill Gates is to blame because he dropped out. Anyways, Isabelle Whitaker, she was 5th or 6th of the U.S. trials last year. A good runner from the University of Pennsylvania. But my God, today was special. 49.24 in an indoor 400. she's ties Femke Bol for the number 2 time in history, right?
Yeah, the only time faster is Femke Bol's world record, 49.17 from World Indoors last year. But
this, I mean, my namesake, Chris Johnson, the Arkansas coach, this dude, they need to put a statue of him with the words 400 written about it. Like, what he's produced in this event in recent years is insane.
Right. They went 1, 2, 3, 4 last year at NCAA Outdoors, which is historic. You know who's fifth in that place? Fifth in that race? Isabelle Whitaker, running for Penn. So, I remember at that meet being like, yeah, Arkansas just went 1, 2, 3, 4. And guess what? They're getting the fifth girl next year as a grad transfer. She's also the older sister of Juliette Whitaker, by the way. Yeah, this one, she goes for it. She didn't even win her conference meet. Now, she ran insanely fast. She ran 49.90 indoors at SECs, which is nuts. It's crazy that doesn't win a conference meet, but she was up against Aaliyah Butler, who was an Olympian in the 400 last year for the U.S. So today they're in separate heats, actually. Whitaker went first and got to the lead, and from that point, 200 meters in, she's like, I'm feeling good. She said beforehand she knew she was capable of more than what she had done in SECs, and she crossed the finish line. She sees the time, and I really liked the quote she had because she knew in the moment, like, this is really special. She had broken the American record. She had broken the collegiate record. She was number 2 in the history of the world, and she made sure to sort of soak it in and enjoy that moment. Even though she wasn't NCAA champion at that point, she still had to wait out the second heat. It was obviously a pretty good chance she was going to be NCAA champion, but she said, my first thought was, I want to hold on to this feeling forever because this is what it's all for. So that was awesome to see. She's from Maryland. She had a very good cheering section coming down to watch the meet. Obviously, one of them was her sister Juliette, who runs for Stanford. So, yeah, crazy performance. American record, collegiate record, number 2 in the history of the world. 49.24, that's an insane outdoor time. To run that indoors in March, watch out the rest of the season.
It's pretty interesting to me, like, first of all, how is Whitaker listed as a junior in flashresults.com? She ran her freshman year at University of Pennsylvania, runs 51.9. Sophomore year, 54.07. Junior year, 52.65. Last year, she gets it back going together, 50.17. So that would be 4 years. This is her 5th year, and somehow she's a junior. I think something's off there. But imagine that. It's like, she's viewed as a pretty good runner. I'm an Ivy League. My sister's is way better. And now suddenly the tables are turned, and she's the second person in the history, the best person in the history of the world indoors. Daniel back on YouTube once says, did the crowd have a sense of what the achievement was? I think they did. The crowd reaction to that 49.2 was like loud as hell.
Yeah. And again, it does help. She is Maryland native, had a bunch of friends and family.
Where we were sitting.
No, it was very loud and people knew like that is a fast time.
I think it's a nice atmosphere here. One of the problems with having the men's meet first and the women's meet first is like some of the parents will buy tickets for the men's meet or women's meet and then they'll leave and not come back. So they can't fill it up. I think the demand would be to fill the stadium. So that can be an issue in terms of like making sure that it's, asking every parent to spend 4 hours at a track meet 2 days in a row is a lot.
I think especially the prelims day, it emptied out a little bit. I looked at the crowd today and it was definitely bigger than for longer portions today than it was yesterday. So it was good.
But I thought it was a pretty good atmosphere in general. What else, John?
I mean, what stands out? I think we got to give a shout out to Jaden Mays, who is one of the heroes of the Oregon women's victory. She didn't win a title individually this weekend, but she was second in the 60 and second in the 200. Obviously, the other hero for Oregon was Wilma Nielsen winning the mile and running the first leg on the runner-up DMR team. But Oregon got a bunch of second places, and 2 of them were Jaden Mays, who didn't have a full year of eligibility left this season. She only had indoors. So Jerry Schumacher noted, he just said she didn't need to come back. She could have just graduated and moved on with her life. And instead, she came back just for the indoor season. She ran 2 fantastic races today. She scored 16 points by herself. What was their margin of victory? 16 points. So, yeah, Jaden Mays, I would say, gets a shout out for putting the team on her back. The Greg Jennings Award of the 2025 NCAA Indoor Meet. All right, we're now going to be joined here by our secret Olympian. He's been waiting in the wings. This is Jason Stewart. He's a 2004 Olympian for New Zealand, the 800 meters. He's got a lot of stories. I don't think he's going to tell all of them.
Oh, my God.
But
Supporters Club members, if you do join the Supporters Club Plus for $1,000 a year, you can get his stories because they're some of the rumors. Don't honestly.
This is a guy you want to have a beer with at a track meet. I'll say that.
But it's been an honor. Jason's been in our Airbnb this weekend. It's an honor to. I've interviewed.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
it's been fun. He bought a shirt. I knew he was a smart guy. He bought a shirt like 5 years ago when we first came out with the shirts. I thought he was Jason Stewart of the Army, from a great runner. He said, no. He downplayed his accomplishments. He's like, I was an okay runner. And then I looked him up. I'm like, wait, weren't you in the Olympics? He's like, well, so lifetime PB.
146.19. It was good back in the early 2000s. Not so
That's
good now.
not really his PB. He was at Worlds one year. He's in 144 shape with Boris Kowski. It went out slow. He would have run 144. People. And he realized without the shoes, that's like a 143. Give him a little drugs, 142. Anyways, all right. This is what I've always wanted to know. How, I mean, I shouldn't compare John and I to an Olympian, but I there's something in my life that probably relates to this. Like, it's weird, like having gone to Princeton, John McDermott, it's like you don't know if you should mention that you went to an Ivy school because then people sort of judge you. How often do you say I was in the Olympics? Does it come up once a day, once a week, once a month? How often does that come in just everyday life?
Never.
Never.
I never mention it because it doesn't matter. Because if people do find out about it, I usually say to them, "Hey, you can see me now. I'm just an extremely normal person, and normal people do, sometimes manage to find ways to end up in situations." And that was me. So I was just a little background. I'm from New Zealand. You can probably tell from the accent. In Australia, I just grew up in a small town. Like, I grew up running around in bare feet on a grass track, and somehow found my way into to being able to compete for New Zealand at the Olympic Games, World Championship, Commonwealth Games. I stayed in a room with Nick Willis, one of the greatest middle distance runners, 1,500 meter runners of all time, in my opinion. And so, to be perfectly honest, it really doesn't come up. Usually it's my wife that brings it up, and I'm extremely embarrassed by it. But
Wait, but does anyone say like, "Hey, were you an athlete back in the day?" Like, yeah, I used to run track.
No, because look, I mean, if you see me now, you'd never be like he was.
That's a lie. We ran with him today, basically 5 miles, 8:40 pace. You get no problem with him, folks. Is it true that if we took you to the track today, you ran a 400? How old are you right now? 40?
I'm 43 now.
If you ran a 400 all right now today,
What now? Well, I think there's two sides to it. It's like, I think if you took me like right now to do it, oh man, I think I could probably still run like a 61 or a 62. But I think if you gave me maybe like a month to, so I didn't absolutely blow my hamstrings or calves to pieces, like just a little bit of, adjustment, I think I could probably still run a 57 or a 58.
All right, I was going to set the line at knowing nothing about your current fitness, but going on one easy run with you today. I was going to set the line at about 60 flat.
Yeah, I mean, like I still run.
your buddy over here, James, told me you'd run 52. I was like,
no, not 52. But I mean, I think probably in terms for the probably more relevant for the crowd out there, probably in like, I mean, to still run under 40 minutes for 10K is still easily achievable.
All right, question about the grass tracks. You mentioned you ran barefoot on grass tracks. Apparently the Kiwis love them because obviously there's a legendary half-mile world record by Peter Snell on a grass track. So how many of them are there in New Zealand, and how often do like high schoolers or like actually kind of good runners run them when they get older? Like, tell me about the grass tracks in New Zealand.
So yeah, I mean, we're a big outdoor country, and we actually don't have a lot of tracks in New Zealand. I mean, you'd be shocked at how few tracks. I think maybe we're up to maybe 10 in total.
In the whole country?
In the whole country, I'm not kidding.
Wait, including grass? Or
No. Just
Okay.
like either we've got maybe 1 or 2 Mondo tracks, and I think like 7 or 8 Rikutan or Konopura tracks. So the rest of it's grass. So as a kid, you're running on grass all the time. You know, so it's like all your high school champs, your age group champs, and you know are done on grass surfaces. I mean, when I say high school, I mean like you're into high school. You know, so like you're
dual meets.
Yeah, the Robert Johnson High School track meets are run on grass, and so I grew up running on grass. But I would tell you this: like I actually felt, in all seriousness, that when I sort of progressed through my career, I really missed running on grass because it was like a natural resistant surface. So I ran 1:48.7 as a junior, which actually was probably my best sort of age group time.
On grass or real track?
Not on a real track. But I did all my training on grass, so it was like a really resistant surface. I never got injured, and it really helped me develop like good kind of ligaments and tendons. I never got injured, and I felt like actually when I went when I was a little bit more serious and I was running in Europe, etc. I was training more on like artificial surfaces. I felt like I kind of lost that edge that I had from running on grass for such a long period of time. And another thing is Nick Willis. I mentioned him earlier. Obviously, a lot of the Let's Run fans will know Nick. Again, one of the greatest milers in recent history. He grew up running on grass as well down in the Hutt Valley. So it's a typical thing that we do. We do a lot of running around on grass and playing rugby and cricket and run. So yeah.
They want to know, what are your thoughts on Geordie Beamish's kick?
Oh my gosh, guys! I've got it. How much time we got?
That's the problem with the modern day internet. There's no ending.
All right,
It can go on all night.
Really?
Like a battery goes out, or I get the.
Okay, I've got a really awesome story about the Beamish family. So when I was in my early 20s, I knew a teacher from Havelock North Primary School, which was very close to where I grew up in Napier, called Neil Sargison. One day Neil says to me, he's like, hey, because I think I'd run in the Olympics at this point. So, I wasn't a huge star or name, but, some people in the running community knew me. So Neil says to me, hey, I've got this kid that I like, would you come out and run like just go for a 30-minute run with him? I'm like, sure. So I go out and I run with this little kid, just tiny. He's probably like 8 or 9 years old. It wasn't Geordie Beamish, it was his brother Hugo, right? Oh. So I ran with Geordie Beamish's older brother, who wasn't. And so at this point, Geordie's probably 4 or 5 years old, right? So I ran with his older brother. So I've known the Beamish family, not like super closely, but of them for a while. And I actually met them in Eugene at the World Championships in 22 and said hi. What do I think of Beamish's kick? I mean, everybody's seen it for themselves, right? Like, he's an exceptional talent. That World Indoor Final really played into what his strengths are as an athlete. And it's kind of funny because despite his clear chops over the steeplechase, in almost like an old school 1500 meter race, like maybe what we saw in like the the early 90s or late 80s, etc. Like Geordie Beamish would be right up there in terms of a gold medal threat in any of those races. Maybe not so much now with the style, the way the races run, but back then, absolutely. And so yeah, he is such an exciting athlete to watch, and obviously I have a slight connection with him. He's grew up very, very close to where I grew up as well, in the Hawke's Bay of New Zealand. So, yeah.
Apparently, there's only John and I thought the population was 5 million in New Zealand. Apparently, it's like 5 people, because you were also with the Ruth family when Sam Ruth was born, or what?
So one of my great rivals when I was at high school, I was quite accomplished as a high school athlete in New Zealand. And one of my great rivals was Sam Ruth's dad, Ben Ruth, who was an awesome runner in his own right. Ran 1:48.95 as a junior in the 800 meters. He held the New Zealand junior 800 meter record for about a week before I broke it. So we were at the time. This was back in the year 2000. So Ben and I were big rivals. Ben was awesome, one of the toughest guys. Shout out to Ben if he's watching. One of the toughest guys that I ever ran against, like mentally. he could draw everything out of himself, which was something I don't think I could as well. Like my body kind of had a shutdown mechanism when it was really, pushing itself to the max. And Ben was awesome, like over a number of distances. Like he beat Adrian Blinko, a very, very good runner, former New Zealand 5,000 meter record holder, Olympian in his own right. He beat Adrian one year at New Zealand Secondary Schools Cross. He was an awesome 800 meter runner as well. And I know him really well. And I actually remember traveling through to where they live now, Tauranga, which is on the east coast of North Island, just as Sam Ruth had been born. And I was there with my girlfriend at the time, and we stayed with Ben and Jess, and there was a bunch of some other athletes from New Zealand that were with them. So just great people. I've been in contact with Ben and couldn't be happier for the progress of Sam. Like just awesome, super exciting times.
Should we be concerned that Dad was an age group ace and then didn't necessarily progress as much, or?
I don't think so. I think just first of all, like Ben's got Craig Kirkwood, very, very good coach in their corner, who's doing all the actual kind of technical work with Sam. And I spoke to Ben a couple of weeks ago about Sam and how things were going, and he said, one of the things that we've been able to do is not do that much actual running training with him because they live such an active lifestyle where they are in New Zealand. Like it's a lot of running on the beach. It's a lot of outdoor stuff. Again, running around barefoot on grass, etc., etc. So they've been able to develop Sam in a very natural and organic way that now kind of like this. Introducing him to running and actual specific training is really resonating well with him. So I don't think so. I mean, Ben's great dad, Jess is great mum, and I think that they're going to do really well with Sam. And by the way, shout out, I think that or announcement, Sam is going to try and run, I believe, under 4 minutes for the mile next weekend or Thursday night, Mount Smart in Auckland. So which would be the first time for a 15-year-old to officially break 4 minutes for the mile.
It would break Jakob Ingebrigtsen's world record as the youngest recorded sub-4 mile. He was 16 when he did it in the summer of 2017. And I would say based on what he's done, running Santana to a tie at the New Zealand Championships and running 401 earlier this year. He's running 1500 equivalent, like isn't it?
341.
Yeah, so he's faster than sub 4 and 1500. So I think if he gets the right pacing, which it sounds like Sam Tana might pace him for this thing.
Rumors are that Sam Tana will help pace him. Tana's also obviously coached by Craig. So
yeah, will be very exciting for hopefully we get a YouTube stream. I love that we had a free YouTube stream of the New Zealand Championships. I could just pick up and watch the final, on demand. It was great.
Well, thanks to the beauty of the internet, I listened to New Zealand radio when Craig Kirkwood said Tana would Rabbits. I don't think it's a rumor at this point. People want to know, Jason, do you have a handle on the Let's Run message board? How can he possibly admit his handle if he's got a fake handle?
No, you can say I have a handle and doesn't say the name.
I mean, the people could post the people could make their best guesses as to who I might possibly be on the Let's Run.com message board. I can tell you that I do.
I think at breakfast you told me what you posted. I was going to look it up to try to figure out your IP.
I was worried about that. Maybe I was misdirecting, Robert. I would never divulge such sensitive information.
We're the most notorious posters on the message board. It could be this.
Hold on. Just full disclaimer. I am from New Zealand. I am not Armstrong Lives.
Okay.
I am not that guy. I can promise you. I'm not Armstrong Lives because I think some people know that guy's from New Zealand.
Oh, you?
I believe so. I'm not that guy.
That's very good. All right, let me get you out of here with this. You had a great, hopefully you feel comfortable saying, story about how you were hanging out with Bob Kennedy and he told you about Moses Kipton, who was his first sub-8 steeplechase.
Yes. Should I repeat on here?
Yes.
Okay, so that's awesome. Like, again, I was not a top-level talent, but
But they thought he was going to be because he was signed with Kim McDonald, who was one of the top agents.
They gave me a shot. Things didn't quite work out. I tried my best, but just somehow I managed to have a number of amazing experiences throughout my career. I had breakfast with Wilson Kipketer at the Olympic Games a couple of times. I'll tell you guys that story afterwards, which was incredible. Where he told me that his goal was to run a 800 where the first lap was 47 seconds. But this particular story, I'd gone to London because I can't remember where I was going to run. It might have been one of the British Milers Club races in Watford or something like that. So I was staying in the room, the Teddington complex, where a lot of Kim's top athletes were staying. So Daniel Coman, the former world 3,000 meter record holder for Jakob, he had a house there. Noah Nguyen, who of course famously beat El Garouge in the 2000 Olympics, he had a house there. Faith Macharia was there. And I was staying in a house that was kind of like I guess it was sort of like a short-term, the athletes could come and go. And there was Steve Slattery, who was a US Olympian over the 3,000 meters. Trinity Gray was there. And Bob Kennedy was there. So, of course, I knew who Kennedy was, right? Like Kennedy, one of the most legendary American runners.
Father of Sophia Kennedy. That's
Father
how
of
everyone knows
Sophia
him
Kennedy.
now, right?
Awesome 5,000 meter runner. I mean, if you haven't seen the Atlanta 5,000 meter final, just go watch it for the moment when Kennedy takes the lead with 800 to go. Incredible. First American under 13. Awesome guy. So one day, Bob and I went. I mean, this sounds surreal saying it because he was such a star runner. Bob invites me to go for a run with him in Bushy Park. Right, this is where all the Africans and the Kenyans in Kim's stable would go run. So I go with Bob. And he starts telling me the story about Moses Kiptanui when Kiptanui was the first athlete to ever break 8 minutes for the steeplechase, right? So he says that they start off. Do we need a?
No, it's good.
Oh, we're good.
No, we're good. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, we go running. We're out there, and Bob told me that the Kenyans they really hated running on asphalt. Right, so they would typically just kind of like jog extremely slowly to the start of Bushy Park, and then they would start running. So this is about a week before Zurich, back in 97.
95.
Sorry, correction, 95. Thanks, John. So back in 95, and they head off towards Bushy Park, and they get to the gate, and Kiptanui turns to Bob and says, "Bob, I am very tired. I'm going to go home." Bob's like, "What do you mean? We'll be running at 10-minute mile pace. Get here." So, okay, Moses, no worries. So he turns around and Kiptanui just walks off. Bob's like, all right, whatever. Goes for his run, comes back. The next day, like, Moses is nowhere to be found. And Bob's like, what's up with this guy? And then Moses apparently stayed in his room or one of the houses at the complex in Teddington for like the next 4 or 5 days. They never saw him. All they did was watch war movies and sleep, right? And Bob, at one point, Bob's like, this dude is like, they've got this big setup for the world record in Zurich. Like, what's going on? This guy can't possibly do this, right? And he's like, well, it's just not going to happen. Anyway, it comes to, like, I think Zurich was always on a Friday night back then. So it's like a Wednesday and they're about to fly out from Heathrow to the meet. And the bus turns up and all the guys get on board. And Moses is there, right? And Bob's like, what is this guy doing? Like, there's no way he's going to be able to run this time. This is going to be an absolute disaster. He's just spent he was so tired he couldn't even get out of bed the last 5 days. So anyway, they go to Zurich, and the day before the meet, like, he sees Moses kind of go up for like a slow run and everything. And he's like, I just don't even know how this is going to go. And of course, the rest is history. The next night, Moses comes out and he runs 7:50. It's either 7:58 or 7:59. Breaks this historic barrier that everybody thought was impossible.
Without a pacer.
Without a pacer, without wave light or anything. And anyway, long story short, the moral was that Bob was, I guess, trying to say to me is that as Western athletes, I wish I'd actually taken more of this on board at the time. The moral is that, like, Moses was like so confident in his form. He's also one of the greatest runners of all time, the former world 3,000 meter record holder, first guy under 7:30. He also was a 5,000 meter world record holder. And the point is that, like, Moses knew that he was in shape. So, like, the week before just almost didn't matter to him. And if I think about myself as an athlete, I was so neurotic about certain things. Like, if I felt bad at any point leading to race, it'd just be a total head case. And I suspect, like, a lot of us would be, right? You know, oh my gosh, what's going on? But it's such a valuable lesson. And I don't know if Bob watches the podcast or anything, but I do remember that story, and thank you so much for telling it to me. And it's such a valuable one, especially for the coaches out there who are watching the podcast or any young athletes, never to worry about, like when the work is done, it's done. And, sometimes just getting to that start line, like with a full, charged battery is more important than doing a, series of stride outs or workout in the days preceding.
Oh, yeah. Well, my brother can follow up with a story of doing the opposite of that one year before. Senior year at conference meet, panicked, got on the bike.
Yeah, exactly. So the great lesson from one of the greatest runners of all time, and also told to me by one of the greatest Americans.
The coaching aspect of me, we'll leave with two things. One is you've got a theory as to, like, first of all, you're now an agent, right? But he's worked in the shoe industry for a long time, designing shoes and whatever. So we've been asking him a lot of shoe questions. And on the run today, we were talking about, well, the 800 times it started to come down. It wasn't really just the 800. It was the mile and the 5 and the marathon. You said you don't think the shoes really help you actually in the race of the 800. You think the biggest change of the 800 is the pacing. Yeah, so
I think there's been a massive shift. And I know Justin Rinaldi, who's a good friend of mine, he was on the podcast. He would have spoken to you about this as well. There's been a massive difference in the way that the 800 meters is executed and the guys train for, right? And as I said to you earlier today, back when I was running, our role models were also the pros, right? So for me, it was like Wilson Kipketer, who was my hero, who was the world record holder at the time. He had that famous run in Zurich where he broke Coe's world record. He went through in 48.3 for the first lap. And Wilson actually told me once when I had breakfast with him at the Olympic Games in Athens, he told me they had a goal runs to see if he could run under 48 seconds for the first lap in an 8, and just to see what would happen, which is just insane by today's standards. And so the point is like, back in my era, and this is not even so long ago, right? The consensus of how you ran an 800 was that you got out extremely fast. You set that rhythm in the first 200. You kind of consolidated through to the bell. You tried to reestablish in the third 200 and then just hang on for dear life. And really interesting stats of all the world records that were run actually, I think out of all of the top 5 times prior to 2024, which was Rudisha's world record, it was Kipketer, the other Rudisha world records, there were 3 of them. Then there was Kipketer in Zurich and Kipketer in Cologne. The final 200 meters of all those races were in the 26.4 to 26.6 range. So these guys you had to hit 600 meters in, say, 74 seconds or 74.5. And now what we're seeing with like the top runners of today, like Wanyoni and Arop and all these guys, they're able to close in way under 26 seconds for the final 200 meters, right? And I think Justin probably mentioned this because he's noticed it as well. And so what's really happening is like what we've seen in the 1500 meters, which is this approach to far more even pacing. Because also remember, back in Al Garouge's era, it wasn't uncommon to see first laps in the 52 to 54 second range, right? And now we've got Jakob who goes out there and he just tries to hit, 55.8, 55.
I had a long conversation with Kiprop one year, the first time I went to the pre-classic. I said, why do you run the first lap so fast? He said, I like to do it and then rest. I'm like, no. It was driving me nuts.
And so what's actually happened is that's been brought down to the 800 now, where you see a lot more conservative opening 200 meters, right? A lot more conservative through the bell. So now the guys are trying to run, say, 141, where they're going through in 50 flat and backing up with, like 51 flat. And it's just really interesting. And Wavelight has obviously helped that, but there's just a far better understanding.
Does this apply to the 1500? Maybe there's hope for Jakob if he doesn't take it out so fast at the start.
Well, yeah, I mean, Paris was a bit of an aberration for him, right? Like to run under 55 by himself. But you see in typically all his record attempts, his fast attempts, he's trying to be, it's almost like his first lap is actually the slowest lap that he's trying to run, right? So he's trying to set that pace. He's not trying to approach his anaerobic threshold early in the race or never cross it. And what they know is that if he can get through to 1,200 meters and under his threshold, he can close out the race in low 40s or under 41 seconds, right? And that's kind of his formula towards the world record.
All right, so I want final question here. I feel like we should ask everyone who appears on this podcast moving forward. who's your pick for the Tokyo men's 1500 meter final?
Okay, so
Jordy Beamish.
Sam Root. I love it, Sam Root.
Sam Tanner.
No, I mean, I feel at the moment that the top 3 guys have kind of separated themselves a little bit. This is no disrespect to Hobbs Kessler, who I rate extremely highly. I think he's great. But I think that Jakob, Jared, and Josh Kerr are kind of like, at least right for now, are the...
Wait a second. You mentioned the Olympic champion. You don't think he's on that level?
Sorry. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I had a couple of beers. And Cole Hocker.
Okay,
So
okay.
those four guys. I know that they're going crazy over there. But those 4 guys are I think they've separated themselves. Thanks for that. They've separated themselves from the pack, and I feel like the winner is going to come out of those guys. I tell you what, I'm very interested to see. And here's an interesting point. 3 of those athletes are running Grand Slam track, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have an unusual, I would put it this way, they're going to have an unusual workload throughout April, May that they don't normally have. And one of those guys is not going to have it. One of those guys is going to be doing what he wants in Norway or Flagstaff or wherever he's training, or St. Moritz. And that guy is the guy who can run 3:26 for 1,500 meters. And the other thing, of course, and I know some guys have brought this up on the message board before, is that there has not been a repeat global 1,500 meter champion in an extremely long time. It is, you guys, I heard you talking about how difficult it is to win at the NCAA level. Well, obviously it's extremely difficult to win at the world level as well. And it's historically more difficult to double back over that 1,500 meter distance. Because I think the last guy to do it from memory may have been Kiprop.
2013 and 2015. Yeah.
I'll do the air asterisks on Kiprop, exactly 2013, 2015. But not even from Olympic to world level, it has not been done. I think I'm not even sure if it has been done, because
El Garouge 03, 04.
Yes, he went from world to Olympics, but not from Olympic to world.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm not sure if it's ever been done. And, we were talking at dinner about when you climb the mountain. I was using the example of Neil Schumann, the Olympic 800 meter champion from 2000. I remember reading an article when I lived in Germany where he was talking about how difficult it was to bounce back from becoming the Olympic champion at a young age. I think he was 22 and he won in Sydney. It's just difficult once you've climbed the mountain at a young age.
But that's why I've been so impressed by Hawker this winter, is the fact that he's like, I want to make the 5,000 team. I'm going for the 3,000 world record. Like, he's finding another goal instead of just resting.
That's true.
It's fascinating.
Anyway, I realize I haven't answered the question. Who do I think is going to win? Even though I believe that Jakob's formula or his window to winning is quite narrow, right? Because we know how he's going to win, right? He has to go out and he has to pull these guys. He has to drag them over their thresholds as early in the race as he possibly can without damaging himself that much. I feel like I like great stories, and I feel like it would be a great story if he was to come back after being written off by so many people as a championship 1,500 meter runner. So I'm going to go on record, not that anybody cares, and say that I think that Jakob is going to get it right in this Tokyo final. And I feel like he's going to run the last 1,000 meters in an Abdi Belay, for all the old heads out there, an Abdi Belay-esque 2:17.5, 2:18. And I think that he's going to win in Tokyo.
Okay, that would be an amazing story. We'd actually have to create a saga about it, because how did this whole thing start? Jakob wins the Olympic title in Tokyo, 2021.
There you go.
He's 20 years old. We think this is going to be his decade. And then he gets upset in Eugene. He gets upset in Budapest. He doesn't even medal in Paris.
Yeah.
These young guys are all coming up after him. And then he comes back on top in the same stadium where he became an Olympic champion. And that would be an amazing story.
And is there a dark side to it? His dad was coaching him, and now his dad's in prison. Like, this is almost like out of a novel.
It's redemption. It's like do you remember when the University of Virginia basketball team, they were knocked out by the 16 seed
UMBC?
That's right. And what happened? The very next tournament, they came back and they won it all. So that's the vision I have in my mind. But I guess at the end of the day, it's I still think he is one guy that can do things in that event that those three other guys, as awesome as they are, cannot do. And I think that he's always going to have a great shot because he has the ability to take that into his own destiny. Whereas Nagoose, Hocker, and Josh, they kind of have to rely on Jakob maybe not executing it as well as he can. And I think that's the subtle nuance difference, is that if Jakob does, he can control the race in the way that he needs to win. We'll see.
No, I love the thoughts. I love
By the way,
analysis.
since this is the last time that Jonathan Galt and I will appear on the podcast, for now,
hold on. Somebody called me a Jakob Glazer. Listen, I'm not a Jakob Glazer. Ask me if you think he'll break the world record.
Do you think he'll break the world record?
No, I do not believe he'll break the world record. I don't believe he's quite.
And this is the last time John and I will be on the podcast. From now on, it's the Jason Stewart podcast.
It might be the last podcast ever if we're going to use this computer moving forward.
He was telling us how he thinks Jared Nagoose may be the most talented runner in the world. But that'll be for another show. I'll get you out of there to this. I realize actually it's been interesting having you here this weekend. A lot of times my questions are like from a coaching standpoint because I used to coach. You were pretty high mileage 800 guy. Like how many kilometers a week?
I'm not sure if I would call myself a high mileage. Well, I tried, right? Like I experimented. So when I was young, and I mentioned earlier, I ran 148.7 when I was 18 years of age. And I was doing no mileage then, probably 50 Ks a week. So
30 miles.
30 miles. And then I eventually, when I had my best years, which were 2004, 2005, I think my world ranking, again, just some more context, I think my best world ranking was like 32 or 33 in the world. So I was not like a top athlete, but I was, middle of the pack. I was okay. And I think at my best, I was running about between 120 to 140 kilometers a week. So I think that's like
75 to 80 miles a week.
To 80 miles. But I built up to it as well. Like throughout the years, I realized I believed that was my weakness and I needed to actually increase my mileage. So that was about what I was.
But we were kind of talking, you think it's a mistake that a lot of coaches make is they get an 800 guy and he's running 30 miles a week and they think, oh, all I got to do is bump up his mileage. How do you know some 800 guys can't run more than 35 miles a week? How do you know if they're going to handle it? You won't even try it? Like,
It's part of what makes great coaches, I believe. And again, as we were saying, it's really easy when you look at I'll use a very famous example that everybody knows, right? Donovan Brazier, obviously one of the most talented 800-meter runners that the US has ever had, ran 143. I was there in Eugene the day that he ran 143 in the NCAA outdoor final. And of course, Donovan comes from that Texas A&M program, which is a famously low mileage program, right? And I think it's really easy when you go into the pros, and also the athletes are like this too, because when they're at college or at high school, but more so college, they've got a lot on their plate, right? They've got class, they've got a lot of structure, and when they leave, they've got a lot more time on their hands to be like, man, what can I do to get better? And if you're a low mileage guy, it's really easy to convince yourself that simply adding more mileage. And the coaches, I believe, look at that too and just say, man, we got a kid who's running 140x as off this amount of mileage. If we were to double it or, even increase it 30, 40%, imagine what he'd do. But again, I think my advice would be you just have to be really, really careful, because you can throw a lot of work or a large increase in work at very talented athletes that will resonate with them on the short term. But in the case of Brazier, right, like what an amazing career he still had it's crazy to say, he had an amazing career as a pro, right? World champion, American record, Diamond League champion, like incredible. Unbeatable. But as of today, he's 26, 27 years of age, and unfortunately he's not out there, and it appears like he'll never even be an Olympian. And that's really sad. So I think that, in the 800, it's a very funny distance, because you can run extremely fast off low mileage and you can run extremely fast off a lot of mileage, and finding that balance is is just really important for young athletes and also their coaches through experimentation and just, I don't know, it's a real art form.
All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. We're blaming Bill Gates for the technical difficulties earlier, but we made it up for you. We had an Olympian. Unlike Donovan Brazier, this guy's an Olympian. I hate to say that, Donovan. I love you.
That's actually that makes me laugh because that's ridiculous. Because it's not even in the same stratosphere. But I guess technically it's true.
Technically. There's no falsities in Let's Run. We give you the truth. Hope you enjoyed the NCAAs, folks.
Hey, if you're listening right now and you're not a member of the coolest club in running, the Let'sRun.com Supporters Club, what are you waiting for? You're at 11:45 p.m. on a Saturday night. You listen to three old guys talk about track. I guess I'm old. I'm 34. You should really strongly consider joining the Let'sRun.com Supporters Club because you get our bonus podcast every week. You get good deals on shoes and gear and all that sort of stuff, and you get exclusive access to our exclusive articles, early access
to the pool reporters reporting.
right.
The NCAA is determined this is the one last journalist left in print media.
So Let'sRun.com/subscribe if you want to join the Supporters Club. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll be back next week. It's World Indoors from China. We'll have boots on the ground. I got to get that flight. So looking forward to that. And thanks for tuning in to our NCAA recap show.